it is absolutely rigged and that we do need leaders in either one of these party structures, but we need leaders who are willing to give of themselves and call out the system and say that I stand here before you to reveal that the system is imperfect, it is rigged, but that I, as a servant, the first among equals, I'm going to try to make some crooked paths straight. And that's what your candidacy did, Kimberly Ellis. I mean, you shook the foundation. And some people have just thrown up their hands and they've said, really, the hell with the Democratic Party, because the corporations have two parties and the people have none. But what we were able to do in California is something special. This didn't happen overnight. We had to convince people who were not within the structure of the Democratic Party here in California to run in their precincts so that they can have a voice inside. So what do you say to both sides, to people who want to continue to work within the Democratic Party, but then there are also some people out there who say the hell with the Democratic Party?
Yeah. I say we need them both. We need people forcing change within the party and people forcing change outside of the party. We won 68% of the elected delegate vote. That cannot be denied.
That's amazing.
And so I would remind folks of something that we as African Americans and certainly as Black women know very well, and that is oftentimes, even though we win, victory is not always granted on that first time. Oftentimes we have to win straight out, win 2 or 3 or 4 times before we actually get to realize that win. And so I just want to remind people, as we are coming up on the anniversary of that historic campaign and day, that we did not lose, that we won in so many ways, and to continue fighting inside and outside for the change that we know is possible, because we are on the cusp. And that is something that no one can take away from us. What they want most is for us to give up and go away. And so what we must continue doing is showing up, because showing up is half the battle, and continue fighting.
In my conversation with Jim Hightower, the former agricultural commissioner in the great state of Texas, we talked about democracy and the Democratic Party and why it is so important for people to be politically engaged, and that it really is the movement of the grassroots that shakes the grass tops, that gets us the changes that we need. And so Jim Hightower gave us a lot of advice about how to be politically involved, and that if we don't like what is happening, we should run. I can hear the commissioner saying it now, that we are not just here to resist the government, we are here to become the government. What does resistance mean to you?
Well, it does mean standing up to the powers that be and their deliberate efforts to knock down the powers that ought to be, and that is a different dynamic than the Democratic Party has been practicing over the last 20, 30 years or so, which is sort of an accommodation with power. You have to confront power. Often, throughout my politicking period, I've seen people, both sides will come out and say, well, we're for consumers, we want to help farmers, we're for labor, But you can't just be for them. You've got to be willing to be against the powers that are running roughshod over them.
Yes.
And that's the big difference here. And that's what resistance is focusing on the actual leverages of power that are being used: money, political process, social justice issues, et cetera, and going right head on at them, because everything else can be and usually is BS. So just
we're not talking about Bernie Sanders.
No, we're talking about bovine excrement, as we say out in the panhandle of Texas. So that really is it, because the only real politics in America from the very start, from Declaration of Independence forward, has been over money and power. That too few people control too much of the money and power, and they use that control to get more for themselves at our expense. And that's what's been happening. Inequality doesn't happen, it's caused.
If you had to give a few words to encourage folks, especially folks who are the workaday people that you talk about all the time, who might not have a lot of, who feel as though they don't have any extra time in their lives, because when you're in survival mode, that's all you're doing. You're just trying to survive day by day, and you might not feel as though you have the opportunity to volunteer or to become a member of an organization, say Our Revolution, or to read the Hightower Lowdown, which I recommend reading. I'm a subscriber too. Let me put that out there. Okay. But what would you say to encourage people to really get involved and resist what? The question is, get involved and what are they asked to resist?
Well, the powers of the elites to direct your life. Some people say, "Well, politics is messy. I don't want to do politics." Well, then that means you don't care about housing. You don't care about your food. You don't care about, your kids being able to get a decent education. You don't care about the basics of life. Of course you do. All of that is what politics comes down to. And so find some comfort level, some issue that does particularly gall you and you want to do something about, and spend just a little bit of time understanding it better so you can just talk about it to your neighbors, to your family, to, in line at the supermarket or, wherever. Just say, do you know this was going on? You just have, that begins the political process, just to have a discussion about, and somebody bringing other people's attention to what's going on. And they already know about it. They feel it, but they may not be thinking about it. So you just build connections, and then do a little bit, volunteer an hour a week, something. It can even be done from home, but it's better to do it together. And to recognize that you're in with a whole group. There's a little hardware store near my home in Austin. You can borrow a tool there. They'll help design whatever you're trying to do. And their slogan is, together we can do it yourself. And that's,
I love that.
Yeah, and that's what you have to think of. We can't do it ourselves, but together you can make a lot happen. And just people in your own block, people in your church group, people in a workplace, break room, or, just a few people can make a big difference. And it's surprising, it used to be people don't send letters to Congress anymore. They send emails, and they're not very effective, really. But it used to be a rule of thumb in the Congress that 10 letters opens a file. That office says, we got 10 letters here. We got to do something. We got to have a position on this. So just a little bit of pushing produces results.
And what can I say about the one and only amazing Susan Sarandon? She is a force of nature. And in our conversation, we really reflected on the fact that we do understand that people are really feeling heavy right now. Some people are even feeling depressed. We talked a lot about what we need politicians to do and what we can do to help, but also understanding that people need to be reminded that they really are the hope for the change in this future, that collectively we can change the dynamics of the situation in our community, in our city, in our state, in our nation, and even our world. And that political activism is so vitally important. And you don't have to have a fancy title to get involved. You can volunteer at your local school. You can volunteer at your homeless shelter. You can go to a city council meeting or a town hall meeting. You can volunteer on a campaign for a candidate or for an issue. But whatever you do, you have to get involved. It gives you the opportunity to not only use that energy that you have, you also get a chance to meet amazing people and people who inspire you. And it really is that inspiration that will take us to the next level. Susan also talked about political activism is like rescuing souls. your craft. I mean, you're skilled. You're an actress. That is what you do for a living. But you also care about the living, what we're living in every day in real life. And so many people of your profession don't necessarily get involved in that way. Why do you do that? You don't need, why do you do it?
First of all, I don't know how I'd live with myself if I didn't, because at a certain point, even before I was media attached, I just came of age in DC also, when I went to college, at a time when the issues were very clear, and you couldn't be young and not try to fix what was going on in the South, fix what was going on in Vietnam. You know, it just was part of being young, and then carrying that, continuing to carry that, you meet the most hopeful, amazing people. So in a world which could be incredibly depressing, as things are unfolding in what seems like an inhumane, cruel regime right now, and all throughout, you know, even before, all along, when you see the environment going, and when you see social injustice, economic injustice, no matter who's in charge, underneath that is a layer of people who just person by person are making a huge difference, are saving life by life. Just unsung heroes, people that you never hear about, that are rescuing souls one way or another, that are changing laws, that are changing situations, that are building houses, that are, you know, putting their lives on the line. So really, it's self-preservation, because if I wasn't involved in grassroots movements, I think I would, you know, really have a hard time surviving. So when people say to me, oh my God, I'm so depressed, I can't, what are we going to do? I said, that you're depressed because you're not doing anything. You're depressed because you're not around people. Teachers, nurses. I mean, the nurses are just the most extraordinary.
Yes,
and how
they
about these
are.
kick-ass teachers recently who've
Yes.
just taken on state by state what was their due? These fabulous teachers, you know. So every time, if you look, the news is not, especially mainstream media, is not going to be serving this up to you. You know, most newspapers are not going to serve this up to you. But that's why all these kids that are finding their information online were so far ahead of the curve, because they were not hearing the same empty kind of shiny objects are over here and don't look really at what's going on over there. They know what's happening. And that gives me hope. You know, anyone who starts knocking the millennials doesn't know the millennials.
Yeah, they don't get it.